This is an explanation video for the second assignment that we have for assessment literacy and performance competencies EDU 485, task and rubric development. This assignment or assessment constitutes 15% of the overall assessment scores, and you should attempt this assignment within group setting, meaning that this is a group assessment and you can maintain the same group structure that you have for the major project. Nevertheless, if you wish to attempt this assignment alone or in pair or in a group of 3 or 4 members, that would be fine. All right. But please do not exceed more than 4 group members for this particular assignment. Now, where does this assignment fit exactly into the overall structure of our course? Let me just go to my MOOC page because I do have a list of topics there. So this is under notes and materials. And if you were to look at Unit 4, authentic assessment, this is where exactly the assessment is parked into. What you have to do for the assessment is to develop a task, an assessment task that falls under the category of alternative assessment or authentic assessment. Now, if you were to scroll down a bit, the notes is here. You can refer to this PowerPoint in the course of you doing the assignment. Okay, I have to scroll down. Sorry, the weekend and blinding lights, you guys have to wait. All right. Or you can listen to the tutorials or lectures given by your respective lecturer and go from there. Okay, so let's go back to the assignment sheet. There are 2 parts to this assignment. One is task development and the other is rubric development. They should be attempted sequentially, beginning from task development, and after this is completed, then you develop a rubric for this task that you have designed. Okay, so the division of marks, it would be 10% for task development and 5% for rubric development. Okay, so let's just scroll down. The information for each part of these components of this assessment is presented here. For the task development, okay, to simplify the whole process of doing this assessment, I have developed a template that, basically you just need to fill up this template, and after this particular template is filled up with all the relevant information, then the first task, the first part of the assessment is completed. Okay, let me just have this under multiple views so that you can see better. So the template is actually 2 pages of a template where you fill up the information of your group members, the first part. And the second part, so let's just go through this template together so that you are clear of the things that you are required to do. I'm just going to go back to 1-page view, make this bigger, and go from the top. Okay, so please fill in the group members' information, the full name and their ID. I know that I have underlined this so that it looks nice. But when you are filling this up, you can just delete the lines, okay? Whatever that works for you. And please also leave the group leader's phone number in case if there's parts of the information presented here requiring more explanation. For example, it will be easier for me to contact you guys. Right, so that is basically the info for the group members. Let's just scroll down. Now, this is the first part that you need to fill up. Basically, some very important information of the assessment that you are developing. The information is presented here. The task that you plan to develop would basically involving 30 students of 3 different learning abilities. Low ability, mid ability, and high ability. Now, this information could be useful in the course of you developing a rubric, as well as in ensuring that the task that you have developed is fair in a sense that it can be attempted and completed by all of the students regardless of where they are on the learning spectrum. Okay, so let's just go down. Let's just go down and look at the information here. Just indicate the subject. Remember that it has got to be tied into the subject or the areas that you are in at the moment. If you are a TESOL student, so English should be a subject addressed here. If you are a science student, regardless of what stream that you are in, it's physics, biology, or chemistry, you can choose any of those or just a general science subject would do. If you are a math student, you can either focus on assessment in maths or as well as science. Okay, any science stream. So form intended tingkatan berapa? Please remember that you should focus on from Form 1 or until Form 5, but not STPM level or primary school level. Components, these should be filled up by those who are majoring in language. That would involve TESOL students or EPB students. Okay, remember that in language learning, there are 6 components: listening, speaking, reading, writing, literature, and grammar. So what would be the focused component for the task that you are developing? Would it be literature or reading or writing? Just write it down here. Okay. Next is assessment type. It must be formative assessment. Hence, there should not be any word that indicates final written here. All right, so there shouldn't be final project or final presentation or final exam, for example. It has got to be within formative structure. Okay, so please indicate the type of assessment that you are developing for this particular assessment. Would it be presentation or performance-based assessment, research workbook, for example, if this is for art students? So please name the assessment type here. Inilah nyawa untuk assessment ini, Okay. And also please indicate the percentage of this particular assessment that you are developing out of 100% of overall scores for the subject. Okay, could it be 10%, 20%? So please indicate the percentage in accordance to the overall scores for the subject. Right, so let's move on to the second page. Please provide brief descriptions about the assessment. Now, the second page consists of boxes. These are areas for you to write down your answers or type down your answers. In any way, these particular boxes should limit your response. Feel free to adjust the size of this box accordingly in accordance to the length of response that you are typing in. Okay, so amend and adjust accordingly. All right. So brief descriptions about the assessment. So after you have indicated your assessment type here, say for example, it's presentation. Okay. Maybe it's product presentation. For a science subject, for example, you guys want your students to develop a product based on recycled items. Okay, so then it should be product presentations. All right, so the brief descriptions about the assessment. Students are required to plan and develop a product based on items that are recyclable, for example. So provide brief descriptions. However, whatever is the length of the descriptions is really up to you, depending on the nature of the assessment that you are developing. Okay? Learning outcomes to be measured. Now, for this part, remember that when we are developing any assessment, it has got to be tied to the syllabus. And with regard to this, you have to identify first what exactly is the learning that you are measuring by doing this assessment. So I'm going to go to a copy of the SKP. So say, for example, we are doing English subject for this assessment. So I'm just going to go to the later page, scrolling down and see whether there's anything interesting that I could show you. Let me just go to the right page. Okay. So this is just batuk lah pula. So this is just an example that I want to show you. How do you fill up the section that we have on this template? Okay. When we look at our DSKP, you cannot just simply copy and paste any content or learning standards, right? We are not doing a test. We are doing an authentic assessment or alternative assessment. This is something that should be attempted over a period of time. All right. And possibly, even though it could be a learning under cognitive domain, for example, it could also be a learning under affective domain and or psychomotor domain as well. All right. So when we are looking at learning standards and content standards to be copied and pasted into this particular template, make sure that the content standards that you are assessing is relevant for alternative or authentic assessment. Okay, so let's just look at this particular page which I'm showing at the moment. The one that appeals to me would be 5.3. Okay, this is PDF copy. I cannot select this, but it should be 5.3. If we were to look at these particular statements of content standard, express an imaginative response to literary text. Okay, this looks decent enough. Let's read further. Plan, prepare, and produce creative work with a focus on language use. So the very verbs plan, prepare, and produce, they suggest that this particular task has got to be developed over a period of time and is not suitable for a test or final exam. Okay, so this is suitable for the kind of task that we want to develop for the second assignment. And if we were to look at 5.3.1, respond imaginatively and intelligibly through creating PowerPoints, visuals, posters, blogs, and web pages, other imaginative responses as appropriate. Okay. Well, obviously, there's something that requires a fair amount of effort, time, that should go into doing this particular assessment. So this is ideal for the kinds of assessment that we are looking for this task and rubric development. Okay, so what we want to do is, of course, I cannot copy and paste because now I've lost the page. It's PDF copy. So what I will advise you to do is, let me just get back to the page, if I could find it. Right. So copy the content standard, focus, as well as learning standards into this box here. Okay. Please retain the numbering 5.3 and 5.31 so that we, the lecturers, know from which part have you taken out these content and learning standards from. Okay, so just copy back the whole thing. 5.3, And then what will be the focus as well as 5.31. That's it for this particular part. I cannot label learning standards, focus, and content standards for you because it's different between subjects. All right, so let's just go to, if I could find it. Okay, this is the SKP for science, and let me just scroll down. This one is thicker. Now it's 70 something pages. Oops. Now, if we were to look at the SKP for science, so this is science form 3. Remember that just now when we look at English, we have content standards, focus, and learning standards. But with science, we don't have focus. What we have are just standard kandungan, content standards, and standard pembelajaran, learning standards. Okay. So if you are not doing language, if you are doing any other subjects, for example, just copy back this particular information, for example, and place it in this box. Okay, so since I've opened the SKP for Science Form 3, let's just entertain ourselves a little bit and look at what could be potential learning standards to be assessed here for the second assignment. Okay, so 2.3, kesihatan sistem respirasi manusia. Of course, if the SKP is in Bahasa Melayu, you retain the Bahasa Melayu convention. You don't need to translate this. Otherwise, the meaning might be lost while you are translating. Just copy back the whole thing. Alright. Berkomunikasi mengenai bahan yang memudaratkan sistem respirasi beserta penyakit dan simptomnya. But the one that will be providing more information with regard to whether this is suitable for our assignment or not would be under catatan. So please read the catatan, mengumpul maklumat, menganalisis serta membuat persembahan multimedia dengan berpandukan data dari Kementerian Kesihatan Malaysia atau dari negara lain tentang penyakit respiratori seperti di bawah ini. So obviously this is something that requires time to be prepared. Hence, this is lovely for our second assignment. Okay, so what you need to do is just to copy the entire thing, masuklah di dalam kotak ini. Alright, so I think you have gotten the idea of how this should be filled up for this particular section. So let's just move to the next item. So after we have provided brief descriptions about the assessment, now the lecturers are clear of what kind of assessment that you are doing, as well as what exactly would be the learning that this assessment is measuring. This is where you explain a bit the details that you have figured out or formulated for this assessment. So how are you going to do the assessment administration? How would the actual process of evidence gathering look like? Okay, so this is where you explained. In the course of filling up this template, it doesn't have to be in paragraph format or proper, it has got to be in proper sentences. But if you want to have this presented in point system, for example, it's still fine, no problem. Okay, as long as it's comprehensive and covers the things that are required and we could understand you, that is more than enough. All right. So under this particular section, you might want to explain how long would the assessment administration take. If it's presentation, for example, students are given 3 weeks to plan for the assessment, and then they get to decide who are the group members, for example, or maybe you want to assign the group members based on different levels of abilities. For example, you want to do mentoring, or you want to get them to be in a group of students of mixed abilities, for example. So there's a plethora of activities and strategies that you could think of. and put here. Okay. And students are given 5 minutes to do their product presentations. And in these within these 5 minutes, everybody within the group has to present. For example, so give us the detail. So this is really uh, basically you presenting the details that surround the execution of your assessment. Okay. The next item is justifications for the assessment selections, and you have to provide two justifications. If you want to provide more, that's fine. But two is more than sufficient if you have two, for example. So what kind of justification should this be? Why are you deciding to do this assessment? All right, to measure these learning outcomes. I'm sure that when we look at one particular learning outcome, there could be a number of potential assessments that you could select from and carry out to measure this, for example. But why are you opting for the one that you have chosen here? So please provide two justifications for here. Um, the next question is, any other assessment types that were also considered, if any? Briefly explain why they were not selected. So when we look at the particular learning outcomes, for example, uh, you might have brainstormed two or three different kinds of assessments that are suitable to measuring these learning outcomes. And if you have considered any other assessment type before choosing to go with the one that you have finally going to go about and doing, all right, so please mention here the assessments that you have considered, but you have decided not to go and proceed with it. Why? Okay. This particular section or this particular item is not compulsory for you to answer. Okay. If you do consider any other assessment type, then please discuss about your consideration here. If this is the only assessment that comes to mind and is the best one, there's no other that is parallel to this, for example, then you don't have to fill this up. You can just leave it blank. Now, the final part of this template is explain the mechanism for scoring. So how do you plan to execute the process of giving marks to students' work? If, for example, this is product presentation and based on recyclable items for science subject, okay, would you be requiring them to present the product and then you give marks while the group is presenting? Or would you get them to prepare to produce a product as well as a poster explaining about the product, and then you get students to showcase their product and poster together, and you sort of like do gallery walk where you walk and view one product and poster from another and then give marks. So whatever that you plan, the manner that you will be giving marks to students' work, please indicate it here. All right. So that's it. So after you have completed answering all of these sort of like items in this template, you are basically done with task development. Okay. Uh, so I don't think this is demanding. Okay. The a large chunks of work could be coming from first deciding what will be the potential assessment, and then do a bit of reading about the assessment that you have decided. Have a discussion with your group members. Maybe you can all attempt all these items together, or maybe you can have a discussion, come to sort of like agreement or consensus, and maybe each member does two items in this particular template. All right. So all the best with that. So after you have completed this template, now comes the second section, which is the rubric development. For the rubric development, I'm not preparing any template. I'm just going to show you the template that we use during the rubric development activity in our lesson. Let me just get right to the correct page. Not quite sure where it is. Let me just have a look first. Okay, this is the one. So by no means, this is the template you should be using for this particular assignment. Come up with your own template of a rubric, okay? Because I don't want to impose that you need to have 3 columns or you need to have 3 criteria, for example. So come up with your own rubric. You might be asking, can we use rubrics that are available on the net and use it for the purpose of this assignment? Even if I were to instruct you guys to come up with the rubric from scratch, there might be group members or groups that would go to the wondrous world of World Wide Web and use the rubric there. Okay, so because this is sort of like still an online world that we are working in, I cannot restrict people from doing that. So for the purpose of this assignment, if you want to use the rubric that is available on the web, you may if you want to, no problem. All right. But please remember that rubric is a customized document, scoring document. And even if you have taken a rubric from anywhere, it still needs to be customized and modified to fulfill the nature and the requirements of your assessment. All right. So even if you were to take your rubric somewhere from whatever that you want to take down, please modify accordingly. Okay. So with regard to this assignment, and in light of you developing your rubric for this particular assessment, developing or taking from somewhere, okay, um, please make sure that this particular rubric that you are using or developing, um, please make sure that the criteria that you have for this particular assessment or the rubric that you are developing here matches or align with the assessment that you are developing here. Okay? Because this rubric will be used to measure this assessment anyway, so they must be aligned. All right? And remember, when we are writing descriptions for any rubric, they must be observable, measurable, specific, and clearly stated. Okay, so modify the descriptions in the rubric so that they qualify all the 4 things that I've just mentioned. All right, so this particular template for task development, if you have filled up all the information, the full mark is 10%, and for rubric development is 5%. Okay, so that will be all. If you have any questions, feel free to discuss in WhatsApp group, or maybe we can have a discussion during our lessons and discuss with your lecturers if you have any questions and whatnot, as well as the week, the submission week and the date of submission. Okay, so I wish you all the best with this assignment as well as other assignments that you have for this semester. Stay safe and take care. Bye guys. Assalamualaikum dan salam sejahtera.